Ciao, amanti di libri, and welcome to 5 books I think you should read. I personally have a little bit, tiny little bit of a gripe with BookTok and BookTube. A lot of us are lacking reading literacy. A lot of us are lacking reading diversely, which I didn't think would become a problem, but here we are. And so don't ask me why I thought I would make it my mission to recommend books that are diversely written, because that's just something I've decided to do. I have more than 5 books, but these are the 5 that I'm just suggesting now. I just wanted to preface that. I shouldn't have to, but I'm going to. I did also finish one of these literally this morning, so I'm up to date on my recommendations, which is great because I actually looked back on my channel and I did a video with it's like 5 fantasy books you should read. And 2 of the options that I was thinking about for this video were in there. We're down to 5. The first book I think you should read is All That's Left in the World. This is a post-apocalyptic romance. I think it might be YA. Don't quote me on that because I don't know. I read this last year, so give me a little bit of leeway. It's about 2 boys who are in this post-apocalyptic world, and they come into themselves quite literally, discovering their sexuality. Imagine The Walking Dead without the zombies, which is not The Walking Dead at all. Yeah, basically it's like COVID-19 on steroids wipes out most of the population. These 2 kids, they meet. One knows that he's gay and the other one didn't really cross his mind. And turns out that they start traveling across the United States, because it's always in the United States, to find the safe haven, the civilization that's restored itself after this traumatic global event. There is a second book to this. I just haven't read it. You can read this as a standalone, which is what I've chosen to do. Eventually I might pick up the second one because I do remember what happens. There is some suspense in here. What is the word that I'm looking for? There are some high stakes. And it literally is just survival of the fittest, and the fact that they fall in love is kind of a subplot. It was a fun little read. I read this in like a week, which is great for me. If you don't know me, I take like a month to read a book. So the fact that I read this in a week speaks volumes of the actual content itself and not a reflection on me. The second book you should read is Chai Time in the Cinnamon Gardens. This is based in Sydney, Australia. It is a retirement village that is owned by a Tamil family, and it's a nursing home. What did I say? Lifestyle village? Nursing home. I can't actually remember what I said. This book is about triumphs, modern racism, immigration stories, found family and communities. It is modern day Sydney with flashbacks to life before Sydney for the Tamil family, and also there's hints at lives before in Greece and Italy and for some of the residents who had immigrated after the Second World War. You follow a couple different people. You follow Ruben, who fled to Australia to avoid dying overseas, and he now teaches Tamil to the younger generation of Australians who were born here and didn't speak the language, and he's a uni student and he's the groundskeeper for the Cinnamon Gardens. You follow Maya, who owns the Cinnamon Gardens and is now a resident of the Cinnamon Gardens. As she's aged, she has decided to keep living there, and you see her when she's younger, when she's mid-aged, and when she's now older, and you see her struggles to become an author as a woman of colour and as an immigrant. You follow Nikki, who is a nurse at the Cinnamon Gardens, and her husband is trying to become a politician, and you just see the difficulties she faces as well. And then there's also Angie, who is the daughter of Maya, who has now taken over the role as main caretaker for the Cinnamon Gardens after a lot of trauma has happened to her. And I know that's a lot of perspectives, but I promise you they all intertwine really well, because every problem that each of them has is caused by someone else. This book is so beautifully written. It highlights the complexities of human nature while also condemning the racism that that immigrants face every single day, while also giving a perspective of someone who is against immigration, who didn't start that way, and then slowly progressed until repercussions caught up with them. That's probably the best way I can explain it without spoiling it, but I don't know if you can see, I tabbed the shit out of this book. I honestly think it speaks volumes about what Australia as a country currently is going through. And if you're not someone who wants to read political books, I don't care. Reading is political at the end of the day. So if you need to understand what's going on around you, this is a great book to do that with. I sobbed. I literally cried. That book has made an everlasting impact on me personally. The next book is So Let Them Burn. This is a duology again, and I haven't read the second one. There's a few, I think I can show you a map. I think there's a map. Basically, peaceful little island gets invaded and taken over. We're following a child prodigy, if you will, the chosen one. Her name is Farron Vincent, and she's been chosen by the gods to defeat the people who are occupying her island. And they have dragons. She is this catalyst for the war, and she wins the war. We're following Farron, her sister Elara. Elara ends up bonding a dragon at a peace summit and has to go train with the dragon, because if she dies, the dragon dies. Sound familiar? Farron is very much against this, and she's trying to break her sister out of the neighboring country without starting a second war. Farron's desperation to get her sister back kind of twists her mentally and morally. And you're watching this kid just fully like face on trauma and take the trauma that she didn't have time to really divulge in, and it really it changes her perspective on everything, and you just watch her become a little bit more insane while her sister is kind of finding inner peace a little bit, and they end up on opposing sides of this battle. Farron, who is very adamantly against this empire, and her sister, who's now being fully indoctrinated and involved in the empire that had occupied their island for so many years and put them through poverty and starvation. And so it's a lot of conflict of interest. It's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of fighting verbally and physically. Yeah, and the only way to break the bond between Elara and the dragon is to kill Elara. Again, I read this last year, so it's a little bit muddled in my mind, but I know that I enjoyed it. The third book I think that you should read is I Feed Her to the Beast, and the Beast is Me. We are following, I believe it's pronounced Laure, Laure, it's French, but she is the only ballet dancer of color. And so she is fighting in this world that wants you to look a certain way and act a certain way when she's already 4 steps behind just off her appearance alone. She makes a deal with a demon spirit that is a river in the catacombs of Paris, and the river is made of blood, and it just it makes her a mortal god. She goes from okay at dancing to exponential at dancing. She starts getting picked for lead roles and things that she was never even considered for before because of her skin color. But the back says that she is faced with an ultimate choice: break herself for a world that will never love her back, or succumb to the darkness that wants her as she is, monstrous heart and all. There is a second book to this as well, and again, I have not read it. I Feed Her to the Beast and the Beast is Me. After this, I felt like I didn't have to continue the story. If that makes sense, but it is, again, set in modern day. It tackles a lot of racism. It also gave me a better insight into ballet. I didn't really understand a lot about ballet. The most knowledge I had on ballet was Barbie and the Swan Lake, or Barbie and the 12 Dancing Princesses. So this gave me a proper deep dive into the ballet world and the expectations of having to be a dancer. Again, these books are to broaden your perspective on life. I am Italian, and I'm pale, and I don't really face a lot of struggles in my life. So reading books like this really does broaden my understanding on what people who aren't like me will experience and what they are struggling with, whether it be intentional or non-intentional. The last book I think you should read is a book that I finished today, and that is The Last Tiger. This is a debut novel from I believe they're brother and sister, but do not quote me on that. It is a fantasy retelling of the Japanese occupation of Korea, with inserts of their grandparents, like actual things that their grandparents had written and said to them. It is loosely based off their grandparents as well. Basically, the Japanese are called the Dragon Empire, and the Dragon Empire have conquered the tiger colonies, which is Korea. And they are killing tigers, magic involved. They banned speaking Korean, which they refer to as the tiger language. Everyone has to speak dragon language. There's full oppression, slaying ceremonies of the tigers. It wasn't the best fantasy book I've ever read, but I didn't know that in the 1920s the last tiger in Korea was killed until I read this book, because I started doing more research on it. It gave me a better understanding of what was going on in the world at that time, because I obviously wasn't alive. But this is the back. It says, in a colonized land where tigers are being hunted to extinction and ancient magic stirs, two star-crossed teens from opposite worlds, Lee Sung, a servant yearning for freedom, Choi Eunji, a noble girl defying tradition, join forces to try and reshape their respective fates. As their relationship evolves from begrudging accomplices to bitter adversaries, they soon find themselves on opposite sides of a battle over the last tiger, a symbol of their people's lost freedom and the key to the liberation of their country. Neither Sung or Eunji can abandon their mission or each other, and as they embark on separate quests to find the elusive creature, each must also find the power within themselves to make their own destiny. I saw reviews on this book that were like, oh, at the end of the chapter where we've got the grandparents note, I felt fully pulled out of the story, and I'm like, it's literally giving you a real life account of what they were going through and why it's written this way. So I don't feel like it's that big of a deal. I feel like it actually adds more to the story. It brings you back to kind of reflect on what's been going on in the story, and that at the end of the day, this is a very stylized retelling of their grandparents' real life living under an oppressive Japanese regime, and would raid their homes for goods and make sure that the Korean people were just fully oppressed and they couldn't rise up. And there's a lot of Korean tradition in here, and one of the main plot points is a arranged marriage. So it really does give you a really good insight into what life was like during that time in Korea. And I feel like while Korean culture is getting really boosted at the moment, we need to remember that it's not all glam and glitz. These are real, they're people who went through trauma and there's a reason that everything is the way it is now. And I feel like this book does a pretty good job at highlighting that in a digestible way, if that makes sense. For a debut book, it's okay. If you read between the lines, it's great. But those are the 5 books that I think you should read to kind of broaden your reading. I don't know, you know what I mean? Finding a good place to start can be any of these 5 books or more. You know, we're not just confined to my suggestion. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any books that you think people should read as well to kind of broaden our scope, leave them in the comments. Or even if there's a book that you really, really liked and you feel like doesn't get talked about enough, you know where to leave it. You know who's gonna listen? Me. I am. But yeah, thank you for listening to me rant and rave about books that I think we should all read, and also my gripes with the current reading community. Can't wait to have my head on a spike. Until then, I'll see you in the next one. Arrivederci.